The good dudes grow 2.0.
Oh, there he is.
Mr. Tommy Chong.
Yes, it is. How are you? Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Perfect.
Oh, good, perfect.
Thank you so much for coming on today. I appreciate you taking time out of your day.
My pleasure.
So listen, I've done some research. First of all, big fan. I saw all of your 8 Cheech and Chong movies when I was growing up, so a huge fan from everything. Those were awesome. Grew up laughing. Perfect. Loved it. During my research on your background, I did come up with a few things. There's only a couple of topics I want to touch, but there's 3 specific things that I personally want to actually know, because a lot of people like me did not know that you started out in music.
Yeah. I was started out as a backup guitar player, a rhythm guitar player. I started when I was 8 years old. I could play enough that a fiddle player across the field from me started using me as his backup. In fact, he taught me how to play backup guitar. And then I hooked up with a full-blood native Indian named Dick Bird. And he was an Elvis impersonator. Again, I was a backup guitar player. Never played the electric guitar until I was, I guess, 17. And then I started playing rhythm and blues. But yeah, I've been one of those guys that can play, right. But I played to make money, right. It was a job, you know what I mean?
Right.
I never really did it as a I never took it serious. I took lessons. Just my dog. It's funny. Hey, stop. It's funny. Every time I do a podcast, my gardener with a blower comes, like on cue. He comes, the gardener with a blower, and my dog sits there and barks at him. He's been doing it forever.
That's hilarious. So
yeah, but anyway, I was and then years later, many years later, I started. What I did, I hired really good musicians in the band, and so then I got music lessons, like on the stage. When they look at me, they call me over. Hey, listen, don't play that chord. Play this one instead.
So in your music career, when you were 16, I read something saying that you met a bass player out in Los Angeles that gave you a Lenny Bruce album, and I think was maybe your first marijuana joint. Was that it?
Yep, that's it.
Is that how it all got started?
Well, we had a jazz club. The only nightlife in Calgary back in the day was like a private jazz club, where you had to be a jazz player. And I could get in the club if I carried my guitar case, because they thought I was, musicians got in free. And so I would go to the club. It was my hangout, That's how I got into jazz. And it was very cosmic. This jazz bass player, Chinese guy named Raymond Ma, he showed up one night. I was there, and he handed me a Lenny Bruce album and a marijuana cigarette. And I put the marijuana cigarette in my pocket because I was kind of scared, I heard about the reefer madness and that, but he lit up one of his own right in the club, and we smoked it, and I was hooked. Is
that where you kind of got the word calling it the Italian cigarette?
yeah, probably. Well, yeah, in Calgary, you could smoke openly because no one knew what it was. And there was, it was almost like a death sentence if you got caught selling it, but no one really knew, and so we could smoke it anywhere. And when they would ask us what kind of tobacco that was, they said, that's interesting. We tell them it's Italian. Yeah.
That's so funny. So yeah. I also saw during the research that, weird enough, and kind of like the same thing we're going through the fire department, and we'll get a little bit more into the legalities of how everything's changing, but the government they would with your background, I would see the government kind of go after you for possession of marijuana or selling marijuana, and they didn't go after you for that. They went after your other business, which was basically a glass company just making bong bottles for cigarettes and water. Is that what happened?
Absolutely. Yeah, the bong company. Well, we were kind of skirting the law. In fact, and so they had to plug it up because we could get away with. There were a lot of head shops back in the day. Marijuana was illegal, but you could sell everything else, roach clips, everything, papers with wire in them, and that. And so the government got a law, paraphernalia law, and it was so stupid that no one took it serious. I mean, are they going to put you in jail for a water pipe?
Yeah, right.
In fact, I was in a movie one time with Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre. It's called The Wash. It was a takeoff on the car wash. And I showed up on the set. Well, they let me write my own bit. And so what I did, I showed up on the set on a little scooter with a bong and a bag of weed. And I told them, I says, the weed's free, but you got to pay me $300 for the bong. and I thought I was so smart, the weed is free. They can't bust me for that. and I could charge them for the bong. Well, I think it was a couple of years later, I got busted for bongs.
That's a whole karma thing. So you get busted for bongs, and now you're back selling cannabis products, being an activator for cannabis. So everything kind of flipped over.
Well, the thing about weed, I learned real early, because I did research, because I wasn't a druggie by no means. I was the opposite. I was like a bodybuilder. I was interested in health. I tried to play hockey. I played football in high school, but I was really light in the butt, in the legs. And so I started working out. I started weightlifting, and I got hooked. And that was back, it was back in the 50s, right. where weightlifting was barred. You weren't allowed to weightlift if you played football.
It wasn't as fashionable as it is today.
No, it was considered. It made you muscle bound.
Right.
and so I've always been, like weightlifting, a bodybuilder. And then I found out that the pot was the only thing that bodybuilders would do, because they did all the research too. And they found out it made them, calmed them down, and right. Then they could get into workouts. They work out really good. In fact, Arnold and all those guys, that was the only drug or substance they would use when they're training for contests.
Right. That leads into my next personal thing. I heard a story that I think Arnold probably was after a competition. They were all outside, or they were hanging out. They were having like bong hit competitions, and then I guess they kind of outbeat you, which was sort of funny in retrospect. Well,
I was a kid. Considered I was the little guy that hung out with these guys. Zabo, the guy that ran the gym, he would have little pot parties at his house, and the thing was, they had a big bong, a nice size bong, and they would put like an eighth of weed in the bowl and fire it up with a torch, and then they would suck it into the bowl, and it would explode, and these guys are nuts. They're the guys that supersets 50, 60 pounds for curls,
right.
And so they were crazy, and the whole thing was to, make that thing explode. And so when they handed it to me, I took because I'm a one hitter, I take a little. That's it. And it was like, get out of here, punk.
I love when I heard that story. That was so funny. Now, what are you thinking about that's coming down the pipeline with all the legalities of cannabis? Where do you see that going? Do you see that headed more I know some federal governments are talking about it. They're trying to get it. The House just passed something a couple of weeks ago saying they're trying to get it. What do you see? What do you envision?
It's going to be rescheduled. First of all, they're going to reschedule it because all the evidence is in. So they're going to take it off that because it's Schedule 1 now. It has no medical use whatsoever. And that was because of the heroin scare back in I guess the early 20s or whatever it was, when they used to have heroin. They were selling heroin like Oxycontin. They were selling it, over the counter for sleep aids or dental work or so, and so they lumped the marijuana in there with the same tag, and so they have to reschedule it to something that it can be regulated, but it has definite proven medical goodness in it, because all my wife's friends, especially my wife, she never smoked pot. She never smoked anything. She thought it aged her, but she does these little strips that I got. These are breast strips with THC in them, and they're like the wonder drug for her set, and they have THC. They have THC, and they're like little breast strips. You peel it off, right. Put it on your tongue, and and she takes a half of one. She cracks me up, but I mean, she's incredible.
Right,
and
yes.
she's beautiful, and she takes like 3 dance classes and yoga classes, and she's got this body that it keeps me awake at night.
Kind of keeps you
but
awake.
It's all from pot.
Kind of keeps you awake. Kind of the clubs, when you own the clubs and you started with, what do you call them? Actresses in the beginning. Was that it? Was that the word we used?
Right. The strip club.
The strip club.
Well, we had there again. See, pot induced. You get high and you think, oh, I got an idea. What happened? I had an after hours club that was given to me. Can you believe that? The guy built a friend of mine. He bought the whole building, and there was an empty steakhouse on the property. And so he, very, very smart guy. He said, "Would you like a nightclub, after hours club?" And I said, "Yes, thank you." And so and that's where I met my wife now, because she was so young. No one would let her in any other club but my club, because her and her sister would go around barefoot. So you can't get in nightclubs without any shoes.
Right.
No shoes, no service. Remember those days?
Exactly.
Yeah. So we had the nightclub, and then I had another nightclub given to me again because, it was very tough. The times had changed. It was the 60s, and times had changed, went from alcohol to pot, and so the crowd, the young crowd, they weren't going for that, and the booze heads, the drunks, they wanted to sit there and look at naked women, and so I opened a strip club, and that's when I found out that dancers, you paid like $200 a week, but actresses, you paid them maybe $50-$60 a week, and they were glad to get it.
Exactly.
And they would do the same, and they did more actually, but they were treated more, instead of like a sexual object, they were treated like human beings,
right.
and it was with respect. Because once the girls start talking, they were, a lot of them, they were not only beautiful, but they're so intelligent, and that they're only working like that because it's the easy way to make money, right. A lot of money, big right. money. And my wife, again, she was too young to work anywhere else, and she looked young, but because I owned the club, when we started the strip, in fact, she was the one that helped me turned it into a strip club, and then she started working there. My brother, he ran the clubs. he hired her first as a cigarette girl, you know, and then that lasted one night, and then she became a waitress, and she became the made more tips than anybody else in the club in the city. The waitresses used to have this little competition who made the most tips, and Shelby made more tips than anybody else in the city because she was gorgeous, and she made this little. She's a seamstress too, you know. She makes clothes, and she made this little sexy dress, and it fools you, and it looks like you're going to see something when she bends over, and of course you don't, but the guys just threw money at her. And the funny thing about her, she would count her tips in front of my dad, who was the bartender. My dad was, you know, was Chinese and and very Chinese, and he worked in restaurants all his life too, you know. but you know, as a bartender, he got a few tips. Nothing like my Shelby 100, 200. Great times.
So on your research at Cannabis, like you said, you did a lot of research. I saw your documentary. Everybody seems to think that if you take what I have in the past, you take a lot of cannabis. The old way was they had the fried egg. This is your brain on drugs and everything else.
Yeah.
It doesn't make, with the research, it doesn't make you stupid. It's not like it's gonna affect you completely, you know, neurologically. It actually have more beneficial neurologically than some of the opiates out there. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. What it does, we have receptors in our brain and for cannabis. And all the research says that all animals do. You know, the cannabis was back in the day. You know, the cowboy days. You know, because I grew up with Roy Rogers and Gene Autry, and when I was a little kid, you know, we got guns for Christmas. The best,
not anymore.
The best gift you could get was a BB gun. We're talking about that. Oh man, a BB gun, and the thing is, back in the day, they had this thing about local weed. You know, the horses, the cows, and that they would eat the local weed, and then they would act crazy. They would like, you know, they would be just weird. They'd be acting weird, and so that was a big joke of the day. You know, oh, he got in some of that local weed, but it was marijuana growing wild back in the West and that. No, it's so effective because what it does. This is my unscientific conclusions, you know, that I came up with. It calms the mind, and to the point where it forces you. All of a sudden, you hear music, and you want to hear. You hear so much of the music that you never really paid attention to, because normally we're thinking of the future, or we're stuck in the past. We're moaning about what we should have done, or we're worried about what we have to do. Well, when you get high on marijuana, cannabis, you're just in the moment. You're enjoying every bit of the moment, whatever it is. Eating an apple, having a bath, swimming, you know, gardening, working, digging a ditch. Whatever you're doing, you get so involved in it because it focuses you. It focuses your attention. No, I got a call coming in. I had to knock him off.
That's all good.
But you know what I'm saying? And so this is why it's negative for some people, like schizophrenics, for instance, you know, because can you imagine you got mental problems and all of a sudden you get high and now you're focused more on the mental problems, right. You see? And so it can be very negative in that way, or some traumatic things happen to you, and it can just, there's times, in other words, there's times and a place. People, I was watching, we're binge watching movies all the time now. And there was one movie, and they're always drinking. They're drinking. And then you see the reason why they're drinking is to calm the nerves. That's what they say, calm the nerves. Well, what it is, like Hemingway, he was a writer. Now, the only way he could write it was when it'd be sloshed, you see? And so what happens again, the alcohol forces you into the very basic things, that you can do. And now if you're a writer, I can just see it, just because it's all stored up in there, and right. It allows you don't get distracted by other worries, because right. you're just trying to like you're trying to drive, you're just trying to stay between the lines.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's the conversation I was trying to have, like, with fire departments and their whole thing. It's fine for you to get off shift after a bad shift and go to the bar and get sloshed, when it might be actually safer and more beneficial for a healthier way to actually go maybe have a THC beer or a strip like yours and just kind of relax and mellow out after that shift, instead of worrying about getting sloshed, even feeling worse the next day, and all the bad stuff that comes with alcohol.
That comes with it, yeah. Like being mean to your wife and kids,
Exactly.
being mean to anybody, or being rude or being ignorant or telling people off for no reason, The trouble is with alcohol, it makes you aggressive, It'll take the meekest guy in the world and he'll fight a brick wall, you know what I mean? And especially firemen. Oh yeah, because you're fighters. That's what you're doing. You're fighting a fire. You're fighting, a disaster. You're the first guys in there, throwing bricks aside, trying to rescue somebody.
Right. We're constantly on edge. So, to take
totally.
that edge off, I would feel like I'd feel much better to take an edge off to where I know A, it'd be healthy, B, it won't make me worse.
Well, look what alcohol does to you. I took a drug course when I was in prison. It was mandatory. Because,
imagine that.
Yeah, well, it was mandatory because I had a drug rap. And so they treated me and I wanted to anyway, And I found out alcohol, what it does, it acts on the body the same way that ether does. When back in the day, they used to use ether when they put you under to operate on you.
Right.
Well, what ether does, it takes you to that close to death. You're that close to death. That's why they have the anesthesiologist there, monitoring your heart rate and so what they do, they just keep you alive, but you're not, but they can do anything with your body because you're really out of your body. So it's an out of body experience when you have alcohol. And the problem, the worst thing about alcohol, it attacks and it destroys the liver. Well, the liver is where everything is distributed to your body, the good stuff, and like the kidney is the filter, but the liver is the distribution center, and then if you ruin that, you die.
Right. Yeah.
As simple as that.
Exactly.
It converts stuff into blood, and then that's your lifeblood, and so you're really drinking poison when you're doing alcohol. You're really drinking poison, and you usually die early. You die before your time. Marijuana, on the other hand,
it doesn't.
No, not at all. The lungs, if you smoke it too much, I had friends of mine. When he turned 80, almost 90, he quit smoking, but he still did edibles.
Right.
And right up until he died. And that's what I found out. It's just so much more healthier for you, and especially firemen, because firemen, the ones that I knew, they worked out. The ones I knew, they had a weight room in the place, and of course you have to work out because just carrying all the gear.
Exactly.
is heavy. Then you got to
100%.
run and climb ladders and all
Yeah,
that.
they don't care on the 100th floor whether you're tired or not.
No, no, you got to be in shape. Oh man, when that World Trade Center happened, and I was watching those guys going up, how many 300 flights of stairs?
Yeah.
With all the gear.
With all the gear.
Oh, I can't. I used to do stairs to stay in shape, when I was on the road. This was a few years ago, because I always did stairs, but, with just my little sweats on. Imagine carrying this gear in your, oh man. You guys are something else. Boy.
Thank you. All right, on closing the show, something on a personal note. I know you had cancer in the past, beat it. It came back. How's it going now? Is it
Gone?
Gone,
like
Fabulous.
a cool breeze.
Fabulous.
Gone. I had my blood work done, and they just wanted to. He said, "There's just one little thing. When you get your blood work done, and the doctor gives you, oh, that's good news. Everything's great, but you're waiting for that one but."
Exactly.
And he says, "Everything's good, but," and I'm waiting. What? I'm very close to being a sugar diabetic, which is dangerous. Right. And so I take a little pill, and that's it. And then I knock off the sugar, which wasn't hard to do. But no, the weed, man, it affects the brain, and in a very, very good way.
I have another firefighter that just got diagnosed with. Actually, I have a friend that just got diagnosed with advanced colon cancer. He's getting his medical marijuana lines. I have a firefighter that had a tumor in his brain, and the University of Miami did give him a cannabis pill, their medication, to go on because he can't take anything like Zofran for the nausea and everything after their chemotherapy. So he's taking that. So this is where this whole podcast started, is that conversation, because the fire department didn't really. They're like, well, we're not sure if you can take it. And he's like, well, it's the only thing I can take, so we need to figure something out. And this is why I started this podcast, is try to bring more awareness, talking to more people, talking to people like you who've been in the industry for a while, and I went through a lot more than most have gone so far, and give more insight on the past, the present, and the future of the industry.
Well, good for you, and don't be shy with the pot. The Rick Simpson oil. It's powerful, and what it does, it almost puts you in a coma. But tell your buddy, if you got any kind of ailments, dose it with a heavy duty stuff. It can't hurt. Right. What the most it'll do is maybe put you in the bed for a couple of days. Like a coma. It's like an induced coma. With munchies, so it's good.
Well, Tommy, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day today to talk with us. I hope you and your family stay healthy during the COVID and everything else, and I hope we can talk soon sometime.
Anytime, and good luck with your. Oh, look at
there's the blower.
there's my cute. Take care, brother.
Take care, Tommy.
Okay, man.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good Dudes Grow 2.0. Thank you for tuning in. If you're still listening to this, that means you gained something out of this episode. So make sure you share it with a friend, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode of the Good Dudes Grow 2.0.